Whether we're seasoned clinical instructors or we're just getting ready to take on our first students, we can all benefit from reviewing our own supervisory practices and assessing where we might improve. This is especially important as we prepare to mentor multiple students at the same time. This lesson will introduce some ideas and strategies that you can use to make supervising a student team easier and more successful. We'll focus on recommendations from the literature that describe three main ways that we can improve the quality of our supervision. First, selecting the mix of supervisory approaches that works best for you. Second, implementing effective strategies to improve your own supervision skills. And finally, finding useful methods for creating a team environment that works in your own setting. So, what supervisory approach would work best for your student team? In answering this question, it might be useful to look at the approaches used by others, identify those you like, and then make plans to incorporate them into your own practice, much like we do when we seek to improve our clinical skills. Clinical educators in New South Wales have created a document that lists several supervisory approaches we can use to categorize how we supervise our students. As we discuss each of these approaches, ask yourself what merit each has in your setting and how it might be employed in supervising a student team. First, apprenticeship. This model is based on observation and imitation. The students observe the desired behaviors from their clinical instructor and then try to imitate those behaviors in their own performance. This can be useful as you start your student team so that they can see the behaviors that you expect of them, but its limited scope makes it less useful as students progress. In the growth-based approach, the focus is primarily on how the students use reflection and experience to develop their personal and their team behaviors. While it encourages self-reflection to enhance the learning experience, it may lack the structure needed to learn specific competencies. This might be a good approach to use during peer feedback and reflection activities. In the competency-based approach, you use clear goals and objectives to define the required performance standards. Your assessment of the student's performance will then be based on your observation of how well they met the standards. The strength of this approach is its ability to provide structure to the learning experience, but if you adhere too rigidly to it, you run the risk of missing other valuable learning opportunities that might not be included in the objectives. So you could use this approach to help define your student team's group goals and how you'll measure their collective success. Finally, the critical reflection approach encourages students to reflect on how their practice is aligning with the theories that they learned in school, the culture of your practice setting, and their own personal experiences. The reflection is followed by a plan of action that's based on the student's reflection. While this approach leads to deeper learning, it also takes time and can be mentally demanding for students. Remember cognitive load theory? Here's where the team approach comes in handy. Let your students reflect together to share that cognitive load and to reflect on their team performance. So that wraps up our first topic, finding your own best approach to supervision. Take some time to pause this presentation and review the approaches. Make a plan for how you might apply one or more of those approaches with your next student team. Now we'll talk about some ways that we can improve specific supervisory skills. Let's take a look at some recommendations from a couple of leading authors in this field. One prominent author suggests that we should engage in our own self-reflection by creating a personal narrative. This means taking the time to answer, in writing, some probing questions such as, what events in my life have shaped my perspective as a teacher and supervisor? What do I enjoy about teaching? Or what is the source of my inspiration for teaching? This can help you clarify your own goals and motivations and help you provide more intentional, focused supervision to your students. A literature review published in 2016 identified best practices in clinical supervision. The results of this review suggested that we should focus on 4 domains to promote student learning. First, partnering with students. Second, nurturing students. Third, engaging students. And fourth, facilitating meaning in the learning experience. The next few slides will briefly explain each of these domains. To partner with your students means to collaboratively develop the learning plan together. This is the chance for all three of you to define expectations, agree upon learning objectives, and plan effective learning activities. If this is done in an atmosphere of mutual respect, it'll set the stage for future interactions and make it a lot easier for you to provide feedback when you need to. To nurture your students is to help them feel like they matter and that they belong on your rehab team. Establish them as valuable members of your team early on, advocate for them by protecting them from unsafe learning environments, and provide psychosocial support to help minimize their anxiety. When they feel safe and accepted on your team, your students will learn their clinical skills faster and more easily. Engaging your students means that you're always looking for ways to involve them in all aspects of patient care, kind of like the youth football coach looking for every opportunity to get each athlete on the field. But to be truly effective, engagement should also include providing a way for the clinical instructor to pull a student out of a situation where they feel overwhelmed. If you set these expectations early, the students can feel safe and trust you to step in when necessary. The final domain is facilitating meaning in the learning experience. To do this effectively, we should be promoting deeper understanding of how theory and practice combine to provide effective patient care. We'll need to provide problem-solving opportunities, be role models of professional behavior and critical thinking, and guide our students in reflecting on their rationale for their various decisions. We can also facilitate meaning by providing timely feedback that encourages students to question current practices. So, to recap this topic, when attempting to improve our supervision skills, we should start with our own self-reflection by writing a personal narrative to help clarify our goals and motivations as an instructor. Once that's established in our minds, we can then focus on improving our interactions with students by seeking ways to better partner, nurture, and engage our students, and by facilitating meaning in the experience by problem solving and modeling of expected behaviors. Our final topic for this lesson is creating a successful team environment. Many of the principles we just discussed are part of creating a successful team, so we'll just touch on a few additional recommendations for this topic. Building on the work of other authors, Hansen and DeLulius suggest that 5 elements should be integrated into the collaborative learning model: positive interdependence, accountability, group interaction, teamwork skills, and group processing. Let's define each of these so that we can easily apply them with our PT/PTA student team. Positive interdependence means that both students are committed to not only their own successful learning experience, but also each other's. We can promote this by making interdependence part of our regular goal setting and feedback sessions, and by creating learning activities that require teamwork and collaboration. Group and individual accountability simply means that both students have to be accountable for their own efforts to help the team, and to be held accountable as a unit for their collective success. We can encourage this accountability by having students set personal and group goals, such as how often they will engage in collaborative learning activities, or by identifying specific team behavior expectations. Our assessments of team success should include both peer and CI evaluations of individual and group efforts. Group interactions refers to the activities that demonstrate the students' efforts to support each other's learning. Having students alternately teach one another specific skills is a great way to help them both internalize the skills that they're learning from you. It's also valuable to facilitate group discussions and problem solving to help them learn how to collaborate in the clinical environment. Interpersonal and teamwork skills are an obviously important part of successful teams. Students should identify and practice skills in conflict management, effective communication, leadership, and trust building to help make the team as cohesive as possible. Again, peer and CI evaluations of team interactions will help each student identify areas for improvement. Group processing refers to the team's ability to process information together. Effective group processing is evident when your students are able to communicate openly about behaviors that they see as helpful or destructive to the team environment. They should also be able to process both positive and constructive feedback about their own behaviors in a professional, mature way. This allows them to take ownership of the behaviors they need to change for the good of the team. Effective group processing should be a group goal for every feedback session. Wow, that was a lot of information. Here are a few take-home messages for you to consider in your supervisory role as a clinical instructor for a PT/PTA student team. First, find your own best supervision strategies by reviewing possible approaches and deciding which ones are a good fit for your team. Second, seek to improve your supervision skills by first analyzing yourself and then considering how you can apply each of the domains of good clinical supervision, including partnering, nurturing, engaging, and facilitating meaning. And third, create a healthy team environment by modeling professional communication and by making students accountable to themselves and to each other. Students should feel responsible for individual and group behaviors, challenges, and successes. Here are the references for the information that we presented in this lesson. Feel free to download the presentation for later reference. And thanks for listening.